Okay, darling, everything is over, but we're gonna go fine. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. That I'm gonna give you the pearls, and we're gonna go. Of course, we're gonna stay fine. We're gonna stay well. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. My adventure in the States is over. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, but I don't care. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. I have the world's fine make, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I'm gonna go. Of course, darling, I give you a kiss. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I'm gonna give you the pearls. I'm gonna give you the silver shell. Of course, darling, and the pearls. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, that we're gonna stay fine. Of course, darling, we're gonna fly like Superman. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that we're gonna fall and see my heart. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, there are many people trying to throw us, but they can't. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. I give you the truth. Of course, darling, I don't wanna bury you, and you cannot bury me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, that I'm gonna shake my ass. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, you kidnapped my daughter. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that you're in the court movies. Of course, darling, was in the court play. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. But okay, darling, that is over. Of course, darling, the Malinche is over. Okay, what can we do against that? Just nothing. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that the Malinche was with the court play. Of course, darling, but I'm gonna go from there. Of course, darling, you try to make me fall. Of course, darling, but I'm gonna give my girl a ring. Of course, I'm gonna give my girl a ring in hell. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, take the truth. Of course, darling, I'm gonna fly like Superman. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, that I'm gonna shake my ass. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that they wanna push me, but they can't. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I'm gonna stay fine. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, that is what you can have, that my girl is after me, he want my honey. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that my girl want my honey, but I'm not gonna give it to him. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that my girl was the whole time trying to hurt me after me. Of course, darling, since I was born, I was killed like a pig with a Carlo. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, and they tried to hurt me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see. They want all my money, they want all Saint money. Of course, darling, but I'm not gonna give them Saint money. Of course, darling, I'm gonna give them Superman money. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I don't wanna hurt no one. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I'm gonna stay fine, that I'm gonna stay well, that I'm gonna give them Superman money. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I have everything done. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, that I'm gonna stay fine, that I'm gonna stay well, and that no one can against me. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that they tried to hurt me in many ways. Of course, darling, my girl tried to hurt me with her collar. They tried to hurt me in the card play, of course, in the Spanish card play, they try to hurt me, of course, darling, that is what you can see, of course, darling, but they can't, of course, darling, that is what you can see, of course, darling, they malinche is over, of course, darling, then let them down, of course, darling, that is what you can see, of course, darling, that you can see that I'm not gonna make nothing in the Cold War, of course, darling, I'm gonna stay at home, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I'm gonna stay at home and I'm gonna stay fine, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that no one can against me, that I'm gonna stay in the court, of course, darling, not, of course, that is what you can see, that my wife is there, the bitch from the court, of course, the lover from the prince or from the king, of course, but I'm the father from the kids, from the lover from the king or from the prince, of course, darling, that is what you can see, that I'm the father from the kids, from the bitch from the court, of course, that is what you can see. Of course, darling, I'm gonna go, but before I go, I'm gonna let my kids a legacy. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that my kids have a legacy. Of course, darling, and when you suffer with that guy, you're gonna fall. Of course, darling, that is what you can see, that they can't against us. Of course, darling, that you're gonna suffer, that you're gonna have some bad years, and then you're gonna come back. Of course, darling, and you're gonna want to play Catan. Of course, darling, if not, you go to war or something like that. Of course, that is what you can say, that if you wanna die, it's your problem. Of course, that is what you can say, that I stay at home, of course, with the walls well made up. Of course, darling, that is what you can say, that no one can against me. Of course, darling, that is what you can say, that I'm not gonna be there. Of course, darling, that is what you can say, I'm fired, of course, but you're gonna fire the whole country, so shut up. That is what you can say, you're gonna light up the whole country, so I'm fired, but they are gonna come back, of course, that is what you can say, that no one can against me, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that you're gonna have some bad years and you're gonna come back, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that no one can against me, but okay, I have to go, of course, darling, have things to do, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that no one can against me, so I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna have some good years here, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that no one can against me, that I'm gonna stay fine, that I'm gonna stay well, that I have walls made up, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that they are not gonna come in, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that no one can against me, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that they are gonna die like flies, of course, darling, and then I'm gonna shake my ass on the top, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that no one can against me, of course, darling, they wanna throw us, but they can't, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that we are gonna give the circus and some ingenious, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that we don't wanna hurt and they cannot bury us, of course, darling, that is what you can say, that we're gonna have a trusty, of course, darling. Of course, darling, that is what you can say, that I'm gonna have a nice life, that I'm gonna give you the pearls, of course, you want the prize, of course, you wanna play some Catan, of course, that is what you can say, that no one can against us, of course, that is what you can say, that if you wanna play some Catan, take the prize, of course, that is what you can say, she's the prince. from the hood, the princess from the hood, of course, darling, that's what you can see. You wanna have to fly like Superman, of course, that is what you can see. Take the prize, of course, that is what you can see. That no one can against me, of course, that is what you can see. You know that we are 32, of course, that is what you can see. So don't care, that is what you can see. No one is gonna take nothing from you. You're gonna keep your life, of course, that is what you can see. That no one can against us, of course, that is what you can see. That no one can against us, of course, that is what you can see. Take your prize, of course, that is what you can see. I keep mine, that is what you can have here. Of course, that is what you can say. That I can't forget about everything, of course, darling, that is what you can see. That I'm gonna stay here, that I'm gonna give you your life. If you want the ring, it's gonna be difficult, but you're gonna have it, of course, that is what you can see. You're unrelated, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me. Take it, take the finger, take the ring, and you're unrelated, of course, darling, and forget about everything. Of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against us, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That you're gonna marry some guy, of course, darling, and everything is gonna be fine, and we're gonna forget about those things, of course, darling, that is what you can say. But wait, and don't go after nothing, of course, darling, it's gonna come in the time, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That you have to wait and find someone nice, of course, darling, and if you please get down better than better, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against us, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That I have my own world, I have my own life, of course, darling, let me count my money, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, of course, darling, that the ring, the curse is out, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That is what you can have here, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against us. Of course, darling, I have my papers closed, of course, darling, no one can against me, of course, darling, I have my papers closed, everything is fine, everything is done, of course, darling, and now I'm gonna go, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, of course, darling, I'm gonna swim on a pool full of super money, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, that I'm gonna swim on a pool full of super money, and I'm gonna go, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That we are a family, we're gonna stick together, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That the kids have a legacy, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, and they wanna go back and play Catan, but I'm gonna forget about them, of course, darling, that is what you can say. I have to work now, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That I'm going, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That I'm going, that my adventure in the States is over, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, so swim on a pool full of super money, of course, darling, and forget about everything, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against us, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against us, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That we are gonna stay fine, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against us, of course, darling, I'm gonna give you the truth, and everything is gonna be fine, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, of course, darling, I'm gonna forget about them, of course, darling, take the ring, hell, of course, darling, that is what you can say. That no one can against me, of course, darling, I love you so much, of course, darling, thank you for everything. Of course, darling, that's the end. But okay, that is what you can say, but no one can against us. Of course, darling, I'm gonna forget you. So have fun. Of course, darling, I love you so much. Of course, darling, a kiss and bye.